Right, here we are at Queensberry headquarters. I'm joined by the head honcho himself, Mr. Frank Warren. Frank, how are we today?
I'm good, Dev. How are you, young man?
Yeah, I'm good. So talk to me about Anthony Joshua against Oleksandr Usyk. We've just seen the rematch. Usyk has retained his titles. He wants Tyson Fury. There's so much to unpick. Give me your thoughts as we are here on a Tuesday afternoon.
Well, the fight went the way I thought it would. I did think that Usyk may have stopped AJ, but he didn't. But he outboxed him, and I thought he won it quite comfortably. I thought that judge, I can't remember his name now. What his name? Yeah, I thought his scoring was atrocious. I mean, especially going into the 7th round, having AJ up 5 rounds. I don't know what fight he was watching. He fought a little bit better this time. I thought he showed a bit more commitment this time in the fight, but it was never enough to beat the guy who I felt has his number and showed that he did have his number.
Tell me, is Oleksandr Usyk the pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world, in your opinion?
No, not at all. How can he be? He's not the best in his weight division.
So that's the kind of how you're coming to that conclusion.
Well, I don't know what is pound for pound. I don't know what pound for pound is. Could somebody tell me what it is? I mean, some journalist has come out and called it pound for pound. I don't even know what that means. You talk about great fighters, and you look at the weight divisions and see who's the best fighters out there. But he's not the best heavyweight in the heavyweight division. Tyson is.
And he wants Tyson Fury, and it sounds like Tyson wants him. It sounds like that fight would be quite easy to make. It might just come together quite quickly. What do you think?
Well, look, both camps speak. They get on well with each other. There's no rival TV channels involved. It's pretty easy to make as far as the splits are concerned and so forth. The issue is going to be where it takes place, and as far as the boxers are concerned, they're looking for significant money to put this historic fight on, because it is an historic fight. It's the first time for God knows how many years that the 4 belts have been fought for. Bob Arum said yesterday it's a bigger fight, biggest fight since Ali Frazier, and I think it's up there. It's certainly not far off of being the biggest fight. I mean, it's the biggest fight out there. There's no doubt about that. The best heavyweight of his generation, in my opinion, is Tyson. And a lot of people, as you said, people call Usyk pound for pound best. Well, I'm not going to argue about that. So he is. So you've got the pound for pound best fighting the best heavyweight of his generation. It's the blue ribbon event as far as heavyweight boxing is concerned. Heavyweight boxing, very rarely do you get these big fights like this come along and happen when they're in their prime. It's always when one guy's on the way out. Very rarely it's happened when they're in their prime, and these two are in their prime. So it's a brilliant event, a massive event. It'd be an historic event, and for me, it's an event we've got to get on sooner rather than later, because mandatories will start coming, will loom, and it's that to make that happen, you've got to make it happen this year.
And what have your conversations been with Tyson Fury since that fight?
Well, he really wants to fight. He fancies to fight big time. He feels he's got the beating of Usyk.
Tell me why he beats Oleksandr Usyk.
I think he's too big. I think he's got fast hands. He's great on his feet. He's got a great jab. He can fight orthodox or southpaw. All the things Usyk can do, he can do. But he's a bigger guy.
So it's all about using the size as well. He's 6'9".
Well, of course, that's part of his his armour and his armoury. He'll exploit whatever he needs to do. But Usyk, it'd be a good fight, because Usyk won't be able to stand off him. He'll have to come and fight him. He'll have to try and get inside him, because he's not going to out-jab. He might have out-jabbed Joshua. He won't out-jab Tyson, that's for sure. So he's going to have to try and get under that jab, and he's just going to come forward.
Much has been made about how Anthony Joshua, his actions after the fight, the taking of the belts, the speech, etc. How do you reflect on it all? What's your take?
Well, I thought he fought better than he did in the first fight. He showed a little bit more commitment and heart in this fight, but he got beat. Hearing him in between rounds, his corner was telling him he was winning the fight. I never got that at all, because he wasn't. And I believe he thought he won the fight, and I think what he did at the end was he was pissed off because he felt that the decision should have gone his way, especially after they announced the first judge giving it to him. And he got the belts and threw them on the floor and steamed off out the ring. He was very angry, you could see that. But I think by the time he got to the entrance to the dressing rooms, somebody's obviously said something to him, or he's had seconds, and he came back. And I think he then tried to rectify what he'd done, and I think he just got himself into a bit of a mess.
There's talk about him getting out in December, only a few months away. If you were sort of in charge of his career and you were close to him, what would your stance be? Would you want him out ASAP to kind of get back in the groove, or do you feel as though he needs a break? What do you think?
I think he needs a bit of time out to reassess where he's going with his career, because he's no longer the guy. He's coming off of his second loss, and he's lost 3 fights in his last 5. He's got to fight his way back into contention, into being, some sort of position. I know his connections said they don't need belts. They never wanted the belts, which is a big, massive turnaround from where they were. They earned a lot of money with those belts, a lot of money, and he earned a lot of money. I don't know where he goes. I mean, it's funny. All the things he was saying in the ring, I felt were quite strange. He was talking about that basically he's not a 12-round fighter. He's not. Was it 18 stone or 19 stone, whatever he is, and these previous heavyweights were 14. Well, Ali's and all them weren't 14. They might have been when they started off. They all wound up being very big guys, as did Larry Holmes and many, many other fighters who had fast hands. And Ruiz is a lump, but he had fast hands, as AJ knows. I sort of, it was all pretty much of a strange. It was like a meltdown, in as much trying to justify himself why he got beat. Basically saying that Usyk had much more experience, etc. But this is a guy who, irrespective of whether he was in jail or what, the fact of the matter was he had quite a strong amateur career. He fought in the amateur world champions, got a silver medal, got robbed. I thought he should have won it. A couple of years later, he was in the Olympic Games, won the gold medal, and he's been a pro now, for how many years? Was it 10, whatever years it is? I don't know how many years.
Coming up to 10, yeah.
10 years, and he's been the champion, 5 or 6 years? 6 years, I'm not sure how many it is, but he's had a lot of fights. He's had 10 world title fights. He's hardly a novice at 32 years of age, or 33, whatever he is. He's not, you can't call him a novice. He's not going to be learning anything now. It is what it is. And he's done well out of it. And up until now, or the fight before, his connections are all saying he's the best heavyweight on the planet. And now he doesn't need the belts. They've been a burden to him. Well, I'll tell you what, I can think of a lot of fighters who'd like that burden and the money that's been earned with those belts.
Well, look, some of those fighters you promote. Joe Joyce is fighting against Joseph Parker. High stakes, 24th September, Frank.
Very high. The winner will get the mandatory position to Usyk. If Tyson and him don't get it on, I believe the WBO's the next one. So they are very, very high stakes, and Joe can't afford to slip up. He's got to focus on it. And Joe's only had 14 fights as a professional. He's got a wealth of amateur experience, but only 14 fights as a professional. So he's got this is a tough fight for him. He's fighting a former world champion who's been working in top-class company with Tyson Fury and helping him prepare for his fights. And I'd be interested to see if Tyson will be there supporting him, because obviously me and him are going to be against each other on that night, if that's the case.
Have you talked about that with him?
I have a bit of fun with him, yeah. I've had a bit of fun with him. I keep telling him that, he's getting your pal's getting knocked out.
Are you going to let him in the building, though, yeah?
No, he's not allowed in. I'm going to bar him.
But you can see some of it's rubbing off. I don't know if they're sparring or anything like that. Hey, maybe if Tyson gets a fight locked in, maybe they will be sparring. But you can see they're going for runs. They're having a laugh together. Joe Parker is sending messages down the camera to Joe Joyce with expletives. It's all good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of Tyson's rubbing off on him. But at the end of the day, when you get in the ring, Tyson won't be in the ring with him. It'll be him on his own with Joe Joyce.
How much of a problem is Joe Joyce? We've just seen Usyk. Obviously, he's got 3 of the 4 belts. He's got a win over Joe Joyce from the World Series of Boxing many years ago. I think it was 2011. Bigger gloves, shorter rounds. How much of a problem do you think Joe Joyce is for the division and actually for Usyk if he manages to land that fight?
Well, that's 11 years ago as amateurs, and Joe's, I think, come on a bundle since then. He's strong. He's got a great work rate, and I was, looking at Usyk and looking at Joe. I mean, Joe's as big as Tyson. So, I think Joe. I think Joe and Usyk, if it comes off, I think it's a real tough fight for Usyk. And for Joe. It won't be easy, but I fancy Joe can do it.
What is it about Joe Joyce which is such a problem for Oleksandr Usyk then?
I think the fact he's got a good chin, the fact that he'll keep marching forward, and he's such a big man. And I think he'll keep pushing him and pushing him and pushing him, and I think eventually he'll catch up with him.
And how do you see him beating Joseph Parker? Same sort of thing?
I think he's got to impose himself, but he does. I mean, he's not going to go out there and get on the back foot, is he? He's going to go out there. That's how he fights. He's on the front foot, and he may take a couple of shots to get to land his own. And it's whether I think he's got a great chin. I don't like to see him get caught, but I think he's got a better chin than Joseph. But I think Joseph Parker. But I think he can wear him down.
And Daniel Dubois is sitting very pretty with the WBA version of the heavyweight title. He's at that top table. There's been a lot of talk about who he could be fighting next. What can you tell us?
He will be out sometime late October, early November, and we're working on a big fight for him at the moment, which I can't go into any details, but we're working on a significant fight for him.
He's a problem for all the heavyweights out there as well, isn't he?
Well, he's another one. He's a young man. He's the baby out of all of them, isn't he? He's the young kid on the block. So he's getting experience. I thought he looked really good in his last fight. I thought he'd done a great job in the States. He went to the other guy's backyard and just dominated the fight from the first bell. And he's improving. He's improving every fight.
So last one on the heavyweight division. It sounds like at the very top, all roads lead to Fury versus Usyk for all the belts in a historic fight, as Bob Arum said, one of the biggest ever. You agreed with him. What happens next? How do we get there?
Well, we've got to get the venue sorted out and get the finances sorted out. And if we can get them sorted out, then we're all good to go.
Confident?
Yeah, I think it happened. I think everybody wants to see it. It's an historic event. This is boxing's World Cup.
It's an absolute monster. Well, let's talk. Let's go down the weights. We'll talk to you about Anthony Yarde. The understanding is Beterbiev is injured, and you guys were looking at putting this fight on in October. Where are we?
Well, I understand he's injured, so we've got to push it back. Anthony will have a fight in between, and hopefully we can get it on very early in the new year, January, with a bit of luck.
So Anthony will have a fight beforehand?
I'd like him to have a fight. We've had a discussion. I think he needs a fight, otherwise he's going to be out for quite a while.
That's not the worst scenario in the world with regards to Beterbiev, though, right? I mean, he's going to get a little bit older. He's just coming off whatever he's had. He's coming off an injury. You must fancy Anthony Yarde heading into that.
I think Anthony, I looked at the fight he had, Beterbiev, with Joe Smith, and he'd done a good job. But I think Anthony would have done a job on Joe Smith too. And I think it's the old adage, styles make fights. I think it'd be a good fight. I think it'd be a very, very good fight. And I think that, Anthony brings power. He's a solid guy. I mean, everybody's fought he's put on the floor. Everybody's fought.
Someone else who's doing the business inside the ring and wants to be a world champion very soon is Zach Parker, unbeaten at super middleweight. He was linked to that fight with Demetrius Andrade. We were meant to go to Pride Park, and then Andrade pulled out. What's the latest as far as you understand?
Well, I'm a bit annoyed, how it all fell apart, because that would have been a great event at Pride Park. Tickets were really going well. I understand last night that Andrade said that he's now going to vacate his middleweight belt and move up to super middleweight, so I'm waiting to speak to the WBO, but if that's the case, then Zach will have to fight him. But that's not a problem. We fancy that fight.
And how does that all work then? Because the purse bid already happened. We won the purse bid.
We'll have to sort a new deal out.
Let's go down to middleweight. We've got a headline event. Our British middleweight champion, Denzel Bentley, defends against Marcus Morrison at York Hall. Talk to me about that fight. That's
a good fight. Denzel's he's got himself back on track, and that's a good fight. It's a tough fight for him, but it's a good fight and a winnable fight. And he come through that. We've got Hamza fighting as well before the end of the year, and I'm trying to work it that we get these two guys to fight each other sometime next year in a big fight in a decent sized venue, the Battle of East London.
And do you feel as though there'll be some sort of status in addition to the British title on the line for that fight?
Yeah, but who's the boss of East London?
I'm sure they both fancy it. And what about Nathan Heaney? I mean, he's another middleweight unbeaten in the stable. He's got a big fight coming up against Jack Flatley on the Joyce Parker show.
He has, and again, if he comes through that, that's going to be a great fight, I think, and a real good. It's a fantastic boxing card. He comes through that, then he's in the mix. So these three guys, they can mix it up between them. There's some big fights to be made there.
I wanted to ask you, how did the whole Amanda Serrano getting onto the Joyce Parker show? How did that come about?
You better ask George. He done the deal.
But great to have. I mean, look, for so long, there's been talk about Frank doesn't have many women on, right? Obviously, there was Nicola Adams, who you led to a world title. Now suddenly you've got Raven Chapman and you've got a unified featherweight champion on.
Yeah, and they're both the same weight, by the way. So, yeah, they're on, and I thought Raven made a fantastic debut. I was pleasantly surprised by that, and the Savannah fight is quite intriguing. I mean, she was involved in and I'm going to use other people's words here, in one of the best fights ever at Madison Square Garden. So she's on the card, and she brings her connection with Jake Paul and Nikita, and they're really nice people to work with. So we're looking forward to that.
Well, she probably also, as you say, brings Jake Paul. She brings Jake Paul. I'm sure Tommy Fury, it's in his hometown. I'm sure he'll be knocking about. He's done a video calling out Jake Paul. Says he wants the fight. I'm sure Jake Paul wants the fight. We need to see this fight, Frank.
Well, we're going to try and resurrect it, but we'll all work on that, and hopefully everybody will be on the same page with it.
Well, fingers crossed. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that's it, mate. I think we're all good to go, aren't we? We've got some really, really good shows coming up, and I'm looking forward to announcing Daniel's next fight. Looking forward to, hopefully we can do that next week, and fingers crossed we get to a stage where we can announce the unification fight, which is the big, big, big event.